other print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Jonathan Roger, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the March 29th issue of the New York Times Arts and Leisure section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The first article is entitled Poetry, Trivia, and Other Pick-Me-Ups. There are many reasons to feel overwhelmed right now, and a steady diet of news podcasts may be exacerbating that mental state. If you need a break, these 7 podcasts offer different kinds of pick-me-ups, including poetry interludes, comedic discussions of obscure trivia, and science-based tips on how to be happier. And the article is written by Emma Dibden. The first podcast is entitled Poetry Unbound. Each episode of this soothing series is a self-contained exploration of a single poem hosted by the Irish poet Padraig Ó Tuama. First, Ó Tuama reads the poem out loud before offering a thoughtful line-by-line reflection on its language, structure, and possible interpretations, often incorporating stories from his decades of experience working in conflict mediation. Episodes are released twice weekly and feature a variety of modern and classic poems. Poetry Unbound is a companion series to On Being, the award-winning interview show that explores the big questions of human existence. As such, it's as much a meditative experience as a literary one, offering listeners a welcome reminder of how to slow down and focus closely. Starter episode is entitled Oksana Maksimchuk, Arguments for Peace. The next podcast is entitled Good Hang with Amy Poehler. In an era when every celebrity seems to have a podcast, it can be hard to figure out which A-list hosted shows are actually worth the listen. Good Hang, the relaxed talk show style show from the Saturday Night Live alumna Amy Poehler, has been a joy ever since it started last spring. Listening often feels like eavesdropping on conversations between longtime friends and collaborators. Guests have included Tina Fey, Kristen Wiig, and Aubrey Plaza, and even when there isn't a pre-existing relationship, Poehler has a knack for quickly establishing rapport. In keeping with the title's promise, the tone is always warm and positive. Poehler's improv background makes for some great riffs. Starter episode, Michelle Obama. The next podcast is entitled The Anthropocene Reviewed. Anthropocene is a scientifically divisive word to describe the human age we're currently living in, a time when human intervention has supposedly transformed the natural world thoroughly enough to send the planet into a whole new epoch. Although experts officially rejected this idea 2 years ago, the concept makes a compelling subject in this enjoyably strange, thought-provoking series from the novelist John Green, who's known for The Fault in Our Stars. In each episode, Green reviews different aspects of the world on a 5-star scale, ranging from the mundane, the Taco Bell breakfast menu registers a 4 rating, to the sublime, sunsets get a 5. The unpredictability of Green's choices and the unexpected ways they're combined within a single episode is a huge part of the appeal. The podcast was released monthly until 2020, after which Green adapted it into a book of essays by the same name. Starter episode is Canada Geese and Diet Dr. Pepper. The next podcast is entitled Bananas. Most news podcasts aren't exactly in the feel-good category, but Bananas is different. Hosted by two comedians, Kurt Braunholer and Scotty Landis, the show highlights offbeat news stories about unconventional crimes, oddball local events, and bizarre human behavior. Think the Florida Man meme, only worldwide. The loose criteria, anything goes so long as it's bananas, makes for a limitless range of subjects, and the host's high-energy commentary is reliably entertaining. Starter episode, Cat Causes Niagara Falls. The next podcast is entitled The Happiness Lab with Dr. Laurie Santos. In January 2018, a Yale University class titled Psychology and the Good Life drew record enrollment numbers and quickly became the most popular course in the school's history. The class, taught by Laurie Santos, a psychology professor, sought to address the high levels of depression and anxiety among students by teaching strategies to live a happier life. Santos started this podcast the next year to bring those lessons to a wider audience. The Happiness Lab explores the scientific reasons our brains tend to make faulty predictions about the future and delves into common lies of the mind, a false or biased belief about what we need to do in order to be happy. Despite all the cognitive science, it's a genuinely fun listen, with Santos and her guests offering plenty of science-based happiness strategies that actually work. The starter episode is entitled Grateful Expectations. And the next podcast is entitled No Such Thing as a Fish. This long-running comedy podcast was created by the research team behind the beloved BBC panel show QI as a way to showcase the bottomless trove of strange and fascinating trivia they've discovered that never made it to air. In every episode, the show's regular hosts, Dan Schreiber, James Harkin, Anna Pitsansky, and Andrew Hunter Murray, share surprising or obscure facts they've discovered in the past week, sparking a group conversation that's reliably hilarious, educational, and just a little chaotic. Even after more than a decade, the host's genuine joy in learning is still palpable, which makes for delightful listening no matter the topic. The starter episode is entitled No Such Thing as a Hedgehog in a Lifeboat. And the final podcast is entitled Strangers on a Bench. This is an interview show unlike any other, capturing spontaneous conversations between strangers. In each episode, Tom Rosenthal, a British musician, sits on a bench in a different London park and strikes up a conversation with somebody he's never met before. His gentle curiosity and wry humor put people at ease, and the resulting interactions run the gamut from fun small talk to profound life stories. In a time of increasing disconnection and loneliness, Strangers on a Bench makes a compelling case for just starting a conversation and seeing what happens. And the starter episode of this podcast is entitled A Fight. The next article is entitled Where Boy Bands Got Their Moves. Brooke Payne is the longtime choreographer for New Edition, and it's written by Brian Siebert. Among the fame costs, lectures to performers about the pain and sweat required to be the best. The one in New Edition's video for If It Isn't Love from 1988 is up near the top. "The party's over," a man with a thin mustache and sunglasses tells the exhausted-looking New Edition members before locking them in a rehearsal room. "It's been a long vacation, and your fans are waiting to see you again," he continues. "And you guys all know how you look in rehearsal is how you come across on stage. So let's do it one more time from the top, and let's get busy." The man who delivers that tough love is not a fictional character. He's Brooke Payne, the group's choreographer, playing himself. Payne was with New Edition in the early 1980s in Boston when the band was just starting. He came up with the name, and he's with the group still, managing, choreographing, and directing its New Edition Way tour, which stopped at Barclays Center in Brooklyn on March 14th. This tour packages the group with its star successors, Boys II Men, and its contemporary Toni Braxton. That makes the show a bulging catalog of chart-topping songs from the 1980s and 1990s, but it's also a greatest hits collection of Payne's choreography. At Barclays Center, those who sang along with all the songs, most of the crowd, also danced along with many of the routines. Payne was instrumental in establishing how boy bands move. Building on the foundation of Motown groups like the Temptations and the Four Tops, he updated the approach. A new edition of those kinds of groups was precisely his idea. He worked out what that might mean on New Edition and its spin-off, Belle Biv DeVoe, and he had an influence on the white copycat act New Kids on the Block. His choreography served as a template for all boy bands that followed, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, and the still reigning kings of K-pop, BTS. Payne, 66, had no formal dance training, he said in an interview before the Barclays show. He was a member of a few neighborhood vocal groups and created routines for them. But the partners I was with just couldn't stay focused, he said, so I started zooming in on the kids at the boys' club right behind the project I lived in the Roxbury section of Boston. Some of those kids, including his nephew, Ronnie DeVoe, became New Edition. Their routines emerged from the interaction of music and Payne's imagination. "I see the choreography in my head before I teach it," he said. "It's always been a puzzle to the guys how I would teach two of them one thing and three something else, and when I put them together, they're amazed at how they don't bump into each other." Payne's hero was Charlie Atkins, the tap dancer who became Motown's chief choreographer in the 1960s, giving teenagers showbiz polish and adapting the basic steps of the black jazz acts and chorus lines of the 1920s to the 40s for the R&B of the era. Atkins called what he did vocal choreography, designed with a singer's breathing in mind and continual awareness of microphone stands, when to back off from them for flashier moves, and when to step up just in time to add voice to the harmony. This is at the heart of what Payne does, too. That's the main drive of most of the choreography, when they step up, he said, because that's the magic. The current tour exhibits how many ways Payne has for vocalists to step up, or to the side, squeezing in a spin or letting one slowly unwind. The motor of his choreography is rotary. As one or two members take a more static turn as lead vocalists, the others keep moving. In sync, but often in relay or counterpoint, switching positions in daring feats of choreographic juggling. Payne's work continues what in K-pop is now called point choreography, memorable, meme-friendly steps. Fans know the New Edition version of the two-step or the lunge that oozes along with the sliding note on the title word of Belle Biv DeVoe's Poison. But it's remarkable how little repetition there is across songs and even within each song. In Payne's choreography, as in Atkins' most intricate routines, the body frequently registers rhythms different from those of the vocals, making the groove and accents visible. The obvious model was Motown, and the resemblances between New Edition and the Jackson 5 are strong, but Payne's favorite vocal group was Blue Magic, 1970s purveyors of Philadelphia soul. Theirs was really the style of New Edition was built from, he said. The preference is revealing. Blue Magic's choreography was mathematically musical and dense with steps. It was the group's dancing more than its singing that led the writer Jamaica Kincaid to hail Blue Magic in The New Yorker as the promise of the Temptations fulfilled. A signature Payne move, the deep bow at the end of each chorus of If It Isn't Love, was also a go-to move for Blue Magic. That bow is an expression of the theatrical etiquette that has remained at the core of Payne's practice, even as he kept up with the times and matched the hip-hop and new jack swing in New Edition's R&B move with pelvic thrusts, body rolls, and party moves of the day. Payne stayed classy. Sometimes I'll get some of the flavor of what the kids are now doing, he said, but the key is not to overdo it, not to put something in there where it looks like the guys are trying too hard. Now that the guys are all in their late 50s, Payne has to be careful not to overdo it in other ways. I can't break them like I used to break them, Payne said, likening rehearsals to boot camp. They all understand I'm not there to burn anybody, but I'm not there for them to cheat either, he added, sounding like himself in the If It Isn't Love video. We drill until it's right. They get tired, but that ain't my problem. Nobody asked them to be entertainers. At Barclays, only Bobby Brown, who's had a few heart attacks, really showed his age. The man who popularized the Roger Rabbit in the Hoppy video for his 1988 solo hit Every Little Step could manage only fitful gestures in the direction of the old moves. Go Bobby, his bandmates and fans yelled in encouragement. If you want to see me dance, Brown said, Google me. But while the current show is certainly a nostalgia trip, can I take y'all back to the 90s, Boys to Men asks rhetorically. Is it all right to take you back a little further? New Edition asks later. It isn't only about the old moves or what Payne called looking for the thing where the audience is going to scream. It's also a demonstration of Payne's skill in making a complicated production flow with the smoothness achieved by great Broadway choreographer-directors like Jerome Robbins and Michael Bennett. Much of the boldest choreography in the show is new, created for the mostly female backup dancers who amplify the boy band routines and support the largely stationary Braxton, who has faced major health problems herself. Like Straight Ahead, the women who backed up Belle Biv DeVoe in their heyday, these performers radiate strength, sass, and sex appeal through their robust dancing, and they kill, a display of what Payne can do with professional dancers who don't have to sing. In his interview, Payne deflected questions about his legacy, although he admitted to being pleased when Beyoncé and the choreographer Frank Gaston Jr. paid tribute to his If It Isn't Love choreography in her 2011 video for Love on Top. What matters to him, he said, is seeing audiences at New Edition concerts still doing those moves. It makes me feel like when Thriller came out and everybody was doing that dance, he said. It's part of the fans' love for the group. I'm proud of that. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Arts and Leisure section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The next article is entitled Making the Impossible Possible by Esther Zuckerman. The Hail Mary directors on their movie and lessons learned. When the directors Phil Lord and Christopher Miller read the unpublished manuscript for Andy Weir's novel Project Hail Mary, they quickly recognized that the story hit their sweet spot. It had all kinds of details that seemed, as Lord said, impossible to translate to the screen. That's right up our alley, he said. For instance, one of the main characters is a lovable but faceless alien with a rock-like skin. And while others might have balked at that challenge, Miller said they knew how to handle the impossible. Lord and Miller have long relished tackling concepts that shouldn't work, since their directorial debut, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, in 2009, the animated adaptation of the classic children's book, which has very little by way of story other than falling food. Next, they leveled up, turning a kitschy retro television property into a critically acclaimed comedy with 21 Jump Street in 2012. Their sequel to that, 22 Jump Street in 2014, came out the same year as the Lego Movie, which, instead of being the crass brand extension you might have expected, was a beloved, zany hit that celebrated creativity. But the two filmmakers had not actually directed a feature in 12 years. They were working on Lucasfilm's Han Solo spin-off movie before being fired over different creative visions and replaced by Ron Howard, who would complete Solo, a Star Wars story, in 2018. Since then, they've become best known as the Oscar-winning producers of the Spider-Verse movies, featuring adventurous animation that has often been imitated. Project Hail Mary, with a screenplay by Drew Goddard, represents their return to directing, and it does so on a grand scale. The adventure stars Ryan Gosling as Ryland Grace, a scientist stranded alone in space on an Earth-saving mission. As he nears the star he's meant to be investigating, Grace discovers that he's not alone. Another ship also contains a sole passenger, but this one is an extraterrestrial with a hardened carapace who happens to be quite charming. Grace and this stranger, whom he nicknames Rocky, soon start to work as a team. It's about the idea that to save the universe, you have to make a friend, Lord said. At a little nook off the lobby of a hotel on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, where the decorations above our table included a book on the cinema of George Lucas, Lord and Miller discussed what they brought from Solo into Hail Mary, their unusual inspirations, and their desire to keep their set playful. These are edited excerpts from our conversation. The first question from the conversation is, why did the challenge of adapting this book make sense to you? Phil Lord says, the things that are daunting about the book, there's lots of dense science experiments. It's in the first person. There's a rock alien with no face who speaks a musical language. Those things all seemed exciting to us. I love a movie that's about process. When we were reading the first few hundred pages, it felt like, oh, this is riffy or thief or something. I love watching guys dig a hole in the ground for 20 minutes. I can't believe how compelling that is. So we're like, I bet we could make you interested in just watching somebody look through a microscope. We wanted to lean into all the things that were hard. We also come from animation, so we understand that something with no face can still express itself through movement. Christopher Miller. People are going to be like, put the eyes on it because the eyes are the window to the soul, or do we really need to have a glass wall between them at all times? There are all these barriers to entry, like, no, that's what's going to make it interesting. The next question is, there have been a lot of changes in the industry since you made 22 Jump Street. I know you went and did, then it trails off. Lord says, we almost finished a Star Wars. Next question, after the solo job didn't go the way you hoped, what did you think your path was going to be? Lord says, we've been busy the whole time, but I think we're always looking to find ways to do something that no one else is doing. When we set out to make Solo, what I love about those movies is they're independent films. So we're interested in that and that character. And that's the energy we brought to Spider-Verse. We can do something in animation that hasn't been done yet. Approaching Project Hail Mary, it was almost contrarian to make a movie that's so affirming about a topic that is on everyone's mind, which is the idea that we're doomed. What I love about Andy's book, and what we've always tried to do in our work, is not just present problems, but try to suggest solutions. This movie is suggesting that we are capable. Hopefully the audience comes out and they feel a little more capable, in part because Ryan was really interested in this choice that he was only going to be good at one thing and he was going to be bad at everything else. He's bad at space. He's afraid constantly, clumsy, and he has social anxiety, but he's really good at microbiology. The next question is, did you learn anything about making space movies on Solo that you took into this? Miller says, we made a lot of great relationships with crew members, and a lot of them worked on this movie. Every time you make a movie, you learn something. Lord says, no matter how it turns out, they can't take away what you learned. Miller says, we met Neil Scanlon and the Creature Shop team that we worked with to make Rocky, for example. We had such a great experience with them making these aliens and robots together. That experience made us very confident that we could get a lot of Rocky's performance through puppetry. Next question is, you are very hands-on as producers, but was there a transition to directing again? Lord says, I'm not even trying to be evasive. No. Miller says, animation is a lot like live action. It's just spread out and the process is kind of backwards. Like you start with editing and you finish with lighting. There's a lot of animation in this too. Lord says, we introduced a crew screening Sunday, and I was surprised because half the people were Spider-Verse crew members that had doubled up. Miller says, crazily, some of the stuff that we did on this movie is leaching its way into the new Spider-Verse movie. there's this process that we used with Greg Fraser, the cinematographer, before we shot anything. A virtual pre-shoot with virtual sets and a guy with a suit and ping pong balls on. Lord says, for 2 months we spent every morning on a motion capture stage shooting the movie. Miller says, making sure the set for the inside of the spaceship was the right set and the outside of the spaceship was the right set. Lord says, and being playful and discovering things in a way you can't when there's 200 people. The next question is, how did you maintain the playfulness you want with the demands of production? Lord says, when Ryan is on wires? Miller says, you have to figure out where you want the wires to go for the zero gravity stuff, and you have to figure it all out in advance and plan and plan and plan. And then you want to give a playground for Gosling and others to figure out something new. For the zero-G wire stuff, we had this rig that allowed, instead of him just being a high school production of Peter Pan slowly going on a line, we had it so that he could spin his body any which way and do air parkour. We had talked to NASA people about what it was like in zero-G for the first time, and they're like, it's messy. You bonk into stuff. You're awkward. You want to throw up. You don't know what you're doing. So we let Ryan use his creativity and his comedic timing to bonk into everything and find his way. Next question is, you mentioned Riffy and Thief. What were other touchstones you were looking to as you were making this? Miller says, a movie called Dark Star, and Lord says, the John Carpenter very early student film. Miller says, the messiness of space, lived in real space, not slick, clean. Lord says, it's a keystone movie because Dan O'Bannon wrote it and is in it, and then that leads to Alien, which O'Bannon wrote. And its photography is something we looked at a lot. It's weirdly warm looking, and the ship is really lived in also. Miller says, another weird touch point, which will make no sense, is Harold and Maude, unlikely friendship. Next question. You've spoken in the past about how there were low expectations for your early movies. Now the expectations are very high. How do you deal with that? Lord says, we're both high anxiety, but we were just as high anxiety making Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Miller says, nobody puts more pressure on us than ourselves. We came on this movie when it was a manuscript, before it became an international bestseller with rabid fans around the globe. And even back then, we're like, we have to do justice to this story because it's a beautiful story. Lord says, we're not particularly strategic from a Hollywood business standpoint. Our strategy is to make things as good as we can and then pray. Next question is, all of your films, including this one, have a reverence for pop culture. How did you think about filtering your own love of that through this character? Lord says, we are like children of postmodernism. We went to college in the 90s, and one of my favorite artists is Jeff Koons, who makes an appearance in Spider-Verse 2. Miller says, I feel like there's no pop culture references in this movie that are from after 1992. Lord says, we also are the Simpsons generation, so there's something in it, in our mitochondria maybe. Miller says, there's a Close Encounters reference that was really just a thing that, and then he trails off. Lord says, our only meeting with Steven Spielberg ever before we left to shoot, it was just a general meeting. He was like, What are you working on? And we pitched him the movie, and he was like, Rocky speaks in music language? He should do the Close Encounters thing. Okay, I'll take that as a green light. This article features a large photo of Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, both wearing black and looking into the camera, and a photo from the movie Project Hail Mary featuring Ryan Gosling as an Earth-saving astronaut in a spaceship. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Arts and Leisure section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The next article is entitled A Meme Goldmine is Leaving Its Mark by Derek Bryson Taylor. In March 2006, Bravo aired the first episode of The Real Housewives of Orange County, ushering in an era of reality television that's become inescapable even if you don't watch the shows. That's because the Real Housewives franchises, they now include New York City, Atlanta, Dallas, and Dubai, with another, The Real Housewives of Rhode Island, on the way. And the tendency of their cast members to tease, yell, and flip tables when they get together are irresistible to anyone who knows how to make a meme. Traded on social media, in emails and texts, they are a way of communicating for those who speak their coded language. Often, the clips show just a few seconds taken from one episode, and they don't always make sense stripped of their context. How do they become memes with staying power? When a cast member's veneer falls and their vulnerability and humanity comes through, said Sherry Williams, an associate professor in race, media, and communication at American University. That, along with the amplification of social media, creates a moment of truth and a meme. Those moments, which Tanya Horrock, a professor of film and feminist media studies at Anglia Ruskin University, defines as little bundles of affect, thrive on the internet. People who haven't even watched the show can understand those memes, she said. They can use them because of how legible they make certain emotions. These are some that over the past 20 years seem to have taken on lives of their own. This article contains 9 subparts that each contain a screenshot from a still photo of one of the shows, and the first one is from The Real Housewives of New Jersey, Gia Guiducci's song, and the photo shows a woman with the caption, "Waking up in the morning, thinking about so many things." Circa 2011. The origin story is as follows. Rifts between family members and close friends are common plot points on the Housewives series, particularly the New Jersey franchise, where one cast member memorably describes her family as, quote, thick as thieves. When Gia Guiducci, the eldest daughter of Joe and Teresa Guiducci, performs a song that she wrote about her family's drama in the show's 3rd season, it is an emotional wake-up call. The proper use of the meme is when you're comically referencing struggle like a rocky week at work or a tough semester at school. This meme is an example of how moments from the shows lose their original message when they go viral. See Will Smith using it to describe the regret of making a St. Patrick's Day video in his hotel room. Some reality TV is contrived and manufactured. Williams said, the real emotional moments aren't when they aren't, and when they translate into memes, the real heartfelt emotion that was originally expressed ends up getting lost in translation. The next meme is from The Real Housewives of New Jersey, and it's entitled The Table Flip, from circa 2009. The origin story is an enraged Teresa Graducci upended a dinner table at Lunello, an upscale Italian restaurant, and turned reality TV landmark in Cedar Grove, New Jersey, during a heated group argument over a book written about Danielle Staub. The table flip, which sent red wine and food flying, put an end to the back and forth, and brought this franchise's first season to a dramatic end. The proper use of this meme is when you need to convey frustration, when you're not being believed or heard. A top contender for the Housewives Meme Hall of Fame, this particular scene, said Sherry Williams, the American University professor, embodies the franchise. The next meme is from the Real Housewives of Atlanta and is entitled The Lies, the Lies, the Lies, circa 2017, and its origin story is the truth, the truth, the truth. Nobody hunts for it like a Real Housewives cast member. It's a running theme on every iteration of the shows. Candy Burris blurted out this phrase during the show's season 9 reunion after learning that a false rumor that she wanted to sexually assault Portia Williams was spread by fellow cast member Phaedra Parks. The proper use of this meme is when you've had it with someone's dishonesty. According to Sherry Williams, no relation, various memes from the show are used in group chats to punctuate our feelings and our experiences. The next meme is from The Real Housewives of Orange County and is entitled That's My Opinion. Circa 2014, this meme's origin story is, who among us hasn't told a friend that her boyfriend doesn't seem to be a good guy and gotten our head bitten off as a result? During the season 9 reunion, a shouting match between Tamra Judge and Vicky Gunvalson over the quality of Gunvalson's boyfriend at the time culminated in this response from Judge, delivered at ear-splitting volume. The proper use of this meme is when you need to express an unwanted viewpoint to a friend or maybe frenemy. Williams said such angry retorts often became a cast member's defining moment because audiences saw it as real, raw, unfiltered emotions. The next meme is from Real Housewives of Potomac, Maryland, and it is entitled But Still I Rise, from circa 2025. The origin story is Maya Angelou was one of the best-known writers in U.S. history and the author of Still I Rise, in which she wrote, "You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. In a moment of considerable poetic license, Stacey Rush recites this line at the show's season 9 reunion after defending herself from accusations that she may have faked her relationship with an ex-boyfriend. The proper use is when you're feeling lyrical but confident amid life's trials and tribulations. Rush's show of resilience quickly went viral on TikTok in 2025, with fans of the show parodying the moment. The next meme is from Real Housewives of Salt Lake City and is entitled High Body Count Hair. And there's a photo that has the cat of a woman, two women, and it says, "It looks like high body count hair." Circa 2024, in an argument at a bat mitzvah during the show's 5th season, Angie Katsanevas, who's the woman on the left in the above photo, used this term, telling Brittany Bateman, not pictured, that her teased hair, dress, and shoes made her look sexually promiscuous or like a porn actress. The proper use of this meme is when you're throwing shade. Tanya Horrick, the Anglia Ruskin University professor, said that memes like this fed into a wider culture of nastiness, adding that they were appealing because of their mean spirit. Slut shaming, she said, was a problematic theme that runs throughout the franchises. The next meme is from The Real Housewives of New York, and it's entitled Clip, Clip, Clip. From circa 2017, the origin story is, at a boozy lunch during the show's 9th season, Dorinda Medley denies wanting to be a part of Tipsy Girl, a brand of wine started by Sanja Morgan. In an effort to silence Morgan, Medley yells, "Clip, clip, clip," clamping her thumb and forefingers together. The proper use of this meme is when you need to quiet a hater. "I have no idea where that comes from," Medley wrote in a Bravo blog in 2017. "I just couldn't figure out a way to stop Sanja from saying more lies." Horrick said that the cast of Real Housewives of New York was excellent at knowing what to deliver for audiences. "Performance is absolutely key to the memes," she said, adding that Medley's animated behavior was made for TV. Perhaps proving her point, Medley has since appeared on 2 consecutive seasons of The Traitors. And the next meme is the cat meme from The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. From circa 2011, this one takes some explaining. But first off, there was no cat in the Housewives episode. In season 2, Taylor Armstrong struggles with forgiving Camille Grammer for airing details of abuse by her husband. Tensions later rise at a party where Grammer's friend attempts to defend her behavior, leading Armstrong to shout in anger. A meme maker later swapped out Grammer's friend for a white cat named Smudge. Why? Nobody knows. The proper use of the meme is when you need to comment on a bewildering conflict. This meme began circulating widely in 2019 and soon appeared on everything from clothing to paintings. Armstrong told BuzzFeed in 2022, adding that she was not bothered by its popularity despite its dark origins. "I've come so far since then that I find the meme hysterical," she said. The next article is entitled The Legacy of an Enslaved Potter. David Drake's descendants who learned of his work just 10 years ago see his jars as an artistic and spiritual inheritance. And this article is by Jory Finkel. There's a photo of 5 African American individuals smiling in a well-appointed living room, and a number of other photos of pottery work and historical records. Upper Marlboro, Maryland. Daisy Whitner, a retired account manager with a head for numbers, was always quick to hang up on strangers trying to sell something. but this call felt different. The woman on the line, speaking softly, introduced herself as April Hines and asked for Whitner's parents' and grandparents' birth dates and birthplaces. Hines already seemed to know their names. Then she started asking about Whitner's great-grandparents. "Hang up. It's a scam," Whitner's husband urged. "Don't give them any more information." But she waved him away, sensing that Hines was after something more significant than a credit card number. By the end of the call, Whitner understood that she was talking to a genealogist who specialized in the African diaspora. And she learned something she had never imagined about herself, that she was a descendant of a 19th century artist, David Drake, an enslaved African-American potter working in the Edgefield district of South Carolina. Dave the Potter, as he was known, made ambitious stoneware jars now owned by great art museums across the United States. "Daisy," Hines told her, "you are Dave's great-great-great-granddaughter." Drake was especially remarkable, Whitner learned from Hines, because he signed his name on his vessels and sometimes wrote short poems on them too. That he had learned to write at all defied anti-literacy laws of the time in South Carolina. This call was a blessing, Whitner, 87, recalled, speaking from the living room of a niece's home outside Washington on an unusually warm January day. "Because of slavery, so many African Americans don't even know where to start," she added. "We don't know who our people are," she said. Whitner sat between her younger sister Pauline and older sister Priscilla on a small sofa with an open Bible and a pale speckled jar, a replica of Drake's work, on the glass coffee table before her. The signature on the pot said Dave and was dated August 16th, 1857. The cursive inscription in the clay read faintly, "I wonder where is all my relation." Scholars tend to frame Drake's poetic inscription as a raw expression of grief made after his wife and children had been sold to other owners. His heirs, 7 of whom were in the room, said they now read it as a question posed across generations to which they are the answer. "We are the relations," Whitner's 54-year-old nephew, Yaba Baker, said from across the table, describing the close-knit, faith-based family that included engineers and teachers. Most live in Washington or its outskirts. Baker is a children's book author and producer of Just Like Me TV, an earnest animated series featuring young black superheroes. That phone call from Hines 10 years ago was the start of the family's journey to reconnect to their ancestor and his celebrated work, on view at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Art Institute of Chicago, and the De Young in San Francisco, among others. In 2021, a 25-gallon, 4-handled stoneware poem jar by Drake brought $1.56 million at auction, a world record for American pottery. And as the family learned more about Drake's work and its value, their educational journey has expanded into a quest for restitution. They are seeking to recover ownership of Drake's ceramics from museum collections and private homes across the country. They believe these objects were essentially stolen from Drake, made under duress, and sold or traded without his consent while he was enslaved. They see Drake's ambitious, alkaline-glazed storage jars as his artistic, spiritual, and financial legacy, and their own. No other heirs of enslaved artists have received this sort of restitution, and there is no obvious legal framework for it. While the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act of 1990 governs the return of sacred objects to tribal members, and an international network of law guides the return of cultural patrimony to countries of origin, nothing comparable supports the heirs of enslaved people. But Drake's descendants have been guided by their own sense of justice. Why, they wondered, do they own a replica of Drake's pottery while so many others own the real thing? Yaba Baker said the worst part is knowing that the heirs of Drake's enslavers could still profit from his jars. These pots are assets, and families are going to use them to build generational wealth or pass them down, he said. And then our kids, who are actually relatives of Drake, are applying for student loans. It doesn't make sense for this to continue. Why should this work benefit other families and not ours? There is more to this article, and if you would like to have that read to you, you may call the studios at 716-821-5555 to have it read to you. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the March 29th issue of the New York Times Arts and Leisure section. We read from the New York Times Arts and Leisure section every Sunday at 3 p.m. Your reader has been Jonathan Rodger. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the re-airing of this morning's Buffalo News. Following that at 6 p.m. is the Buffalo News Viewpoints. Stay tuned for this reading and more throughout the day. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.